Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. In today's video, we are here to talk about the rise and the fall of my Etsy shop. So if that is of interest to you, then please keep watching. Okay, so without rehashing everything, I'm just gonna give a synopsis. Let's throw it back to summer of 2018. At that point, I had been on YouTube for 1 full year, and I was thinking about creating my own products to potentially sell. Now, I'll be honest in saying that I was interested in creating my own stationery products for myself, but I obviously had the bright idea that if I were going to create them for myself, and if they were going to be something that I would consider to be up to speed or up to par, I would welcome the idea of selling those things, those products, to other people, even though I had never once sold anything to anyone ever before in my entire life. Fast forward to November of 2018, and that is when I officially launched my Etsy shop. So we're gonna be talking about the rise and the fall from 2018, November of 2018, until now, November of 2022, 4 years later. I do have a whole playlist entitled How to Make Money Online, where I shared my journey from the start, from the conception up until current, and you can check out that if you want all of the nitty-gritty details. Mainly regarding, my whole purpose in sharing was that hopefully it could be helpful to people who were still working a full-time job and who wanted a side hustle, which is what was the case for me and what still is the case for me. Everything that I share on YouTube, for me, it's about trying to share with others that there can be balance. And I mean, there are more reasons than me just trying to share how to balance one's life with a full-time job and a side hustle, but I try to make sure that I'm being realistic in my approach when I'm sharing pretty much any kind of details about anything online. So November 2018, only a few months after I had conceptualized the idea of creating my own stationery products, and honestly, only a few months after any of it even became an option for me. So I got everything that I needed to get. I purchased everything that I needed to get. I did share already in a video how much my startup costs were. I think they were somewhere around $300 to $400, and I break all of that down in a video. I think, yes, I did an Etsy series where it was like a 4 or 5 part series where I broke down all of the information that I could possibly break down. And I do remember my startup costs being somewhere between $300 and $400, and I think closer to $400. So my startup costs were not high at all. In fact, I would go on to maintain as much money as it took for me to actually start up the shop is pretty much about how much money I would go on to spend each month on running the shop, which, if you ask me, in comparison to how much money I was bringing in, especially in those beginning years, it was not too much, not too high of a price to pay. Okay, November 2018, launched the shop. You would have never been able to prepare me for what was to come. Like, I knew, I had really gotten down to the nitty-gritty regarding how much shipping was gonna be, how much fees were gonna be, how much, like, I knew the ins and outs of how much it was going to cost me to produce any of the products that I was going to be selling. I knew all of that down to the penny. So I was prepared to turn a profit, and that kind of is what obviously enticed me to actually even go through the process of starting the small business. So I knew I was going to turn a profit, but you could never have prepared me for how much of a profit I would turn. I would say I was expecting maybe $1,000 my first month, but that did not hold to be true. I actually earned way more than $1,000. Again, I've shared all of that before. I am going to be taking you through year by year my stats. So that's why we're here today. I want to share with you the stats regarding the rise and the fall of my Etsy shop. But again, you would not have been able to prepare me for what was to come in terms of how much I would sell, how much revenue I would generate, all of that. And I want to talk about 3 factors that I think contributed to the rise, 3 main factors, and I'll break those down. And then also 3 factors that I personally believe contributed to the fall of my Etsy shop, and again, I will break those down as well. So first of all, November 2018, that is when I personally feel like there was an influx of folks who were building an online presence and who were also branching out. So all of that to say, in 2018, by 2018, I had been on YouTube for 1 full year. I had somewhere between 20,000 to 30,000 subscribers, I think closer to 20,000. And literally, I can't make this up. It seemed like the natural order of things to build up an online presence, even if you like purposefully or not purposefully. I did not, set out to be a YouTube content creator. It kind of fell in my lap. So whether or not it fell in your lap or not, it just seemed like the natural order of things to go forth and branch out and to start, some kind of small business also in relation to your brand and, seize the opportunity. And so that is what I did. It's not only what I did, you guys, so many people were doing this. I promise you, it just felt like the natural order of things. I guess if I try to compare it to something, and this doesn't always have to be the case, but it was the case for me, having graduated high school with honors and having built up my resume to look the way that it did and all of that, it seemed like my next step in life, since I did not, I had no plans of becoming a small business owner or a business owner or joining the military. It seemed like the natural order for me was to go on to college. And so that's what I did. It just seemed like a natural order of things. And that's how natural starting this Etsy shop was for not only me, but for many of my peers as well. So that was one contributing factor, is that it's essentially like the right time, right place, if I'm being honest. The next contributing factor to the success was, of course, having a social media following. People always ask me, do I contribute or attribute any of my success on Etsy to having a YouTube channel? And the answer is yes. I already had captured the minds, hearts, views, not even views because I had way more views than I did subscribers, but I had already captured 20,000 people who had stumbled upon my channel at random and who subscribed. So I already had a large following when it comes to what I was about to embark on and the products that I was going to sell, because those people were there as a result of what I was talking about on YouTube channel, meaning that whatever I went on to sell on Etsy, the stationery products that I sold, directly coordinated to what I was doing and what I was already using in my YouTube channel. I was already using stationery products and whatnot and showing them on my YouTube channel. They just were not ones that I designed or created or sold myself. They were ones that I purchased. So it was a direct correlation. That's why I feel like it was just the natural order of things at that time. And then the third contributing factor, I strongly feel, is that the products that I was selling were unique in that at the time I could not find those products specifically that I would go on to create to purchase for myself, meaning that at the time, anytime before I started making those myself, anytime before 2018, I could not readily get my hands on any of those, no matter where I searched. I could search Etsy, in-store, different websites. There were not products that were specifically curated to fit my needs. And so that's why I started making my own products. And again, I had the bright idea to also sell those products. But just creating those unique products, I feel like was a large contributing factor to my success. So those are 3 contributing factors that I think led to my success. Let's talk about what led to my fall, and then I'll take you guys year by year into my analytics and share with you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So for all intents and purposes, the first 2 years of my shop were great. In fact, I did the most in revenue and in sales the first year, and then the last 2 years have been a little rocky, to put it lightly. So you can clearly see that there is a huge decline in sales in 2020. I will have to say that the year started out strong, but then we all know that 2020 just started out strong naturally, and then around the middle, spring, summer is when stuff started to hit the fan and the pandemic took place. And so you can clearly see that that had a huge negative impact on my shop. So not only was there less of a demand, consequently, there was less of a supply. Now, that doesn't always have to be the case. We all know how economics work, but for me in my situation, because people weren't seeking out these products, because I wasn't prioritizing supplying these products, the supply also went down as a result of the demand having gone down as well. So people weren't purchasing the products, rightfully so, I'm assuming, because this you know, what I was selling is definitely at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to meeting one's hierarchy of needs, especially during a pandemic, one that we've never lived through. So I was not been out of sorts about that. I was not purchasing other people's stuff either during that time. Like, I was prioritizing purchasing other important things during that time as well, because it was a time of uncertainty. So because the demand was not there, the supply was not there on my part, because when the sales were going down, that didn't entice me to be like, okay, like, let's create some new products, let's get this thing back up and running, let's see what I can do to pivot. It just was not a priority to me in the year of 2020. And I would have to say that the person in me did exactly what I felt like I needed to do, which was to take it easy in 2020 and not try to increase my supply just to possibly try to increase my demand. But the business owner in me definitely failed miserably. So eventually, you know, trying to navigate 2020 and 2021, especially now in 2022, it would go on to not make any financial sense for me to continue to run my shop. Why? Because years have passed. You guys, it's 2022 now. It's almost the end of 2022. Years have passed, and I have just not prioritized creating new products or trying to kind of reignite my Etsy shop and get it back off the ground. I just liken it to, you know, Apple. If Apple stops at the iPhone 14 and they don't make any more products, then they're probably not going to generate as many sales as they would if they were to keep working hard at increasing their technology and just bettering their product, especially when there are so many other competitors. So that's exactly what took place in my situation. So because I didn't keep up, because I wasn't prioritizing the Etsy shop, there were other things happening behind the scenes, such as Etsy increasing their fees, which they continue to do. I'm sure you've heard about it. They're really good for continuing to increase their fees over the years. That's kind of their thing. And so eventually with COVID, I clearly noticed it, but I just decided to not even pivot accordingly. I noticed that the shipping labels were costing more, meaning that USPS or Etsy, because they have a partnership with USPS, both of them, one of them, however it goes, the shipping rates had much increased. I'm talking like 20, 25 cents, and that probably doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're used to paying $3.25 to ship your product to Florida, to South Beach, Miami, and now you're having to pay $3.50, $3.60, $3.70, $3.90 to ship the product during this time. It's a huge difference, especially if you don't adjust your prices accordingly. And if I'm being honest, I was always a little finicky about my prices. I felt like I was kind of at the max that I could charge without feeling bad as a human, because that's kind of where the person comes into place and not the business owner. But the facts are the facts. The facts are that I do not have the capacity, I lack the capacity to expect someone to pay for something that I wouldn't pay for, or to expect someone to buy something that I wouldn't buy. I think you call that integrity, and I'm happy to possess that. But I wasn't going to be raising my prices $2, $3 to keep up with COVID over the product, just because of the products that they were. So, you know, I just decided to take the L, and that's just the bottom line. So on top of all of that, if that wasn't enough, I think that the third factor that contributed to the shop's fall is because everybody else was kind of starting and keeping up, and during this whole time since 2018, people were starting Etsy shops selling similar products to mine. People were continuing to create products and to keep that demand high and to navigate that way better than I did. And so I just feel like I looked up one day and the market was not oversaturated. I don't believe in that. There were already so many products being sold like mine, people doing, designing way better than me. And they just were keeping up with not really COVID or all of that and staying ahead of that, but just staying with and ahead of the times when it comes to what the people want when it comes to stationery. I just feel like I just did not keep up, and there are shops out there who are selling the exact same types of products as me, make no mistake, who have kept up. Like, again, I haven't designed anything new in years. I just haven't done so, and I don't beat myself up about it. I'm really it's really not that big of a deal. But I refuse to ever come on here and share all of the highs and the great things about life and not also share some of the struggles, especially when it comes to something like this, because this could be helpful in this space. So yeah, I'm just bowing out gracefully. It just really is not a huge priority to me. I will say in the beginning, maybe like into 2020, I was kind of feeling like, wow, like Shay, you have two options. You can pivot and get with it, or you can get lost. And well, let's just say the time went by and I got lost. If I'm being 100% honest, vulnerable, and transparent, which is something that my husband and I always talk about doing and being, I could not care to put the time and energy into my Etsy shop whenever my YouTube channel had taken off the way that it did. So in 2020, brands were coming out the woodworks. I did more brand collabs than I ever did before. And I think in 2020, still to this day, it probably holds the title for how many brand collabs I did. And I only did like 18. So I only did maybe one every 1.5 is, I guess, about the average. 1.5 per month, if that even is a real average. So that's all that I did essentially, but that generated way more income than the work that I was putting into my Etsy shop. And when it comes down to it, to create, to conceptualize, film, edit, upload a video, get it to a brand and get it back, that whole process could potentially, let's say it takes at max 5 hours. Well, I'm gonna earn in a month from that one brand deal more than I would earn from my Etsy shop in a month, which is going to take way more than 5 hours to keep up with my Etsy shop had I tried to keep up with the numbers in the beginning, is what I'm trying to say. So back when I was doing $3,000 or $4,000 a month, that's what I'm comparing this to. So 2020, YouTube brand is up here, small business is kind of slowly declining, and then eventually, the scales just kind of tipped. And I'm not mad at it because time is freedom, and there are a lot of things that contribute to freedom. And so it just is what it is. I do want to talk about these stats, so let's talk about these statistics. Okay, so I have November 2018 to November 2019, November 2019 and November 2020, so on and so forth, just because I opened my shop in November of 2018. And I have it specifically like November 1st, 2018 to November 1st, 2019, November 2nd, 2019 to November 2nd, 2020, so on and so forth. So let's take a look at my first year, 2018 to 2019. I had almost 70,000 shop visits, 1,500 orders, a 2% conversion rate, which I don't know what that is, and I had $26,000 in revenue. So that was my first year. And as you can see, direct and other traffic brought in 46,000 visits, which is the case. And that's always going to be the case because my reach is essentially larger than Etsy's reach, if I'm being honest, like as far as the target audience that I had. So I think right here it says Etsy app and other Etsy pages brought in 22,000, and I probably had more than 22,000 subscribers. So that's what I mean by it was a no-brainer that I would bring in more visits than Etsy would. But shout out to Etsy for bringing in some views, and that's kind of the perk of Etsy. So I'm going to keep talking about Etsy. I'm not finished talking about Etsy. I'm going to do more videos, but let's talk about my product that continues, or that would continue to reign supreme. It is these little products here. They were really inexpensive. They were only $3.50, and up until recently, until I deactivated everything in my shop, they were the product that got the most views, that was favorited the most, that got the most orders, and generated the most revenue each year, even this past year. So this is kind of like a look at 2018 to 2019. Let's look at 2019 to 2020. This year, we had more views. We had almost 98,000 visits. We had 1,300 orders, which was about $200 less. My conversion rate was less, and then my revenue was less too, at 23,000. And same thing, 68,000 I brought in 70% of my views in 2019 to 2020, which is to be expected. And same thing for those scripts, which still continue to reign supreme. So let's look at November 2020 to 2021. 31,000 visits, way less. 528 orders, way less. A 1.7% conversion rate. I know what that is. I don't know why I said I didn't know what that was. I know what that is. That's higher. And $6,800 in revenue. Etsy brought in 50% of my visits. I brought in 50% of my visits. And then let's look at the most recent year, which is 2021 to 2022. 25,000 visits, declining, but still not too terrible compared to last year. 262 orders, 1% conversion rate, and $2,800 in revenue. And I brought in 62% of my visits, and Etsy brought in 38% of them. So as you can see, it makes sense. If you have a larger following on any platform, obviously, and you're trying to start an Etsy shop or sell anything, it's going to make a whole ton of sense to market yourself. And I also stopped marketing. Like, I stopped doing YouTube videos about my new releases and new products, which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I still continue to bring in more visits, but I should have continued to do that. But let's talk about all time. All time, 232,000 visits, 3,700 orders, 1.6% conversion rate, a revenue of $59,000. I have brought in 63% of my visits. Etsy has brought in 37% of my visits. And by 63%, I mean, I've brought in double the amount of visits that Etsy has brought in. So I do love, I've never run an ad. People ask me about ads. As you can see, I have never run an ad in my entirety of having my Etsy shop. I'm not against it whatsoever. I just really didn't feel the need to do so. One thing that I also want to drive home before we wrap up this video is that when I started Etsy, I have never had any plans, YouTube, Etsy, no matter what I'm doing, of stopping working full-time and running my Etsy shop or my business or my brand. I have never had that be something that I considered. I continue to not have that be something that I consider. So it's still not at the top of my, it's just not, I mean, I make more money going to work is what I'm trying to say. So nowadays, not when I first started out. It was a little rocky, but with inflation and the salary increases and raises and whatnot, if that's what you want to call it, with inflation, which I don't really know if you can consider it to be a salary increase or a raise, because if your salary's here and we're working with this inflation rate, and then the inflation goes up and then your salary goes up, I mean, you can consider it to be a raise, but really, I mean, yeah, it's literally just a raise to kind of keep up with inflation and with the times. But I never had any intention for this to be a full-time gig. I do believe that if that were the case, I could have done real big things. I could have had more time to design and do all the things, but it's just not my priority. I just kind of wanted to share with you guys a whole accurate depiction of the rise, the fall, my numbers, just laying it all out on the table. Like I said, I have much to say about Etsy, lots of things to say about Etsy. So I think I'll do a couple more videos, perhaps, just talking about my experience now that I'm on the other side of it, that type of thing. So let me know if you have any interest in that. Let me know if you have any questions about this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new and if you're liking what you're seeing, and I will catch you guys right back here in a few days in a brand new video. Bye guys.